Let's start again. So we'll continue this afternoon with cystic fibrosis. So I will let now the floor to Sarah to introduce our next speaker. Sarah.
Thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Mark Hansen, who's a professor at the Department of Pediatrics of the Faculty of Medicine in Geneva. He's developed a theme on the role of intracellular communication in the inflammatory response from murine models of pancreatitis and acute pulmonary involvement, in particular in the context of genetic diseases and cystic fibrosis. His research is currently focused on host pathogen interactions in cystic fibrosis. And the title of his talk today is The Impact of Apical Basolateral Polarization of Human Airway Epithelial Cells on Bacterial Infection in the Context of Cystic Fibrosis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Cherry. Good afternoon, everyone. I will try to share my screen. And yes, and oops, sorry for that. Here we are. All right. Okay, so I may like to start with this first slide, just to introduce the disease that we are working on. So which is cystic fibrosis. So you already heard a lot about CF today. Just to remind you that CF is caused by mutations of the CFTR gene, which makes the CFTR protein dysfunctional. So CFTR is actually a cyclic AMP activated chloride and bicarbonate channel, and this channel plays very important roles in the airway epithelium. So CFTR, as you can see on this scheme, is localized at the apical surface of the airway epithelium, and this channel triggers the osmotic movement of water to the airway surface liquid. So when CFTR is dysfunctional, the eye cell becomes dehydrated, its viscosity increases, and thereby reducing mucociliary clearance. So this situation provides a favorable environment for infections, including infection with this bacteria, Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So Pseudomonas actually is an opportunistic pathogen which takes the lead and colonize the airways and lungs of CF patients, leading to a situation of chronic infection and chronic inflammation dominated by neutrophils. So the combination of plugs, bugs, and aggressivity of neutrophils towards the lung parenchyma leads to a progressive decrease in the respiratory functions in the lungs of patients suffering from CF. So, however, there is still a question that remains poorly understood so far, is what are the links between CFTR dysfunction and the early colonization, early infection of the airways by Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So in this context, CFTR is a very interesting protein, not only because it fulfills the chloride and bicarbonate transport as well as water transport, but because it can interact with proteins of the actin cytoskeleton as well as proteins of the junctional complexes, contributing thereby to differentiation and polarization. And of course, this is also having an impact on the mechanisms of regeneration of the airway epithelium. And this is not surprising that there is evidence that CFTR may play a protective role in epithelial mesenchymal transition, as well as in some kind of cancer. So with this in mind, the question that we asked is whether there is an intrinsic defect in the regeneration process of the CF airway epithelium linked to the early infection by Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So talking about regeneration, this brings me to the next slide and to discuss about the dynamics of cell differentiation during regeneration of the airway epithelium. So this is actually a figure that has been taken from a paper recently published by the group of Pascal Barbry in Nice, in France. So you can see here a scheme, a very well-known scheme of the airway epithelium with the basal cells at the basal side of the epithelium and the most differentiated cells facing the lumen, goblet cells, secretory cells, and ciliated cells. And here on this side of the screen, you can see immunostainings of primary cultures of airway epithelial cells actually provided by Epithelics. So again, you can see that basal cells are nicely located at the basal pole of the epithelium. This is a staining with a basal cell marker keratin 5 as compared to secretory cells and ciliated cells, which actually are stained here by keratin 8. And you can also appreciate that basal cells are not stained at all by keratin 8. So what happened during regeneration and single cell RNA-seq did help us a lot to understand the underlying mechanisms. And we now know that differentiation of regeneration of the airway epithelium followed a continuum starting from actually basal cells, which proliferate and migrate to cover the denuded area to regenerate actually to regenerate the epithelium. And this is actually a rather fast mechanism, taking a couple of days and leading to the generation of some early progenitor cells, the suprabasal cells and the secretory cells, as can be seen here. And this process goes on until the wound is closed or the naked area is totally covered. Then comes the second step of the differentiation process, of the regeneration process. That is actually starting from supravasal and secretory cells, which slowly will differentiate first into goblet cells and then later on to multiciliated cells. And this is a process that takes usually a couple of weeks. So in the lab, we can recapitulate this regeneration process using primary cultures of airway epithelial cells. And so what we do basically, when we receive these beautiful cultures from Epithelics, we just like to destroy them. So we induced a circular injury, a circular wound, as can be seen here. This is a top view from a transwell insert, but there are still some cells that remain at the periphery of the transwell. And this system is fascinating because, as you can see, within 2 days, we can actually repair this wounded area and cover the wound within basically 48 hours. So below here,
Marc Chanson, excuse me, for the moment we cannot hear you. If you can turn on your mic.
Did you, is it a long time or just now?
Yes.
Just happening
now
now?
It's perfect, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So basically I wanted to show you this paraffin sections here that corresponds basically to this area here, you know, at the transition between the non-injured area and the injured area. So we can see here the intact epithelium at the back, and at the front we can see here the cells, basal cells that are proliferating and migrating. And here in this intermediate area, probably we can already detect some cells, some early progenitor cells, the suprabasal cells and secretory cells. So using this approach, we also performed the RNA-seq to compare the regeneration process of CF and non-CF primary cultures. So this is actually an overview of the gene ontology analysis that we have been performed. And as you can see, many gene functions were found to be upregulated or down-regulated under different conditions before injury, shortly after wounding, at wound closure time, or several days after wounding. But the bottom message is that two processes did pop up from this analysis. Dysregulation in CF cells versus non-CF cells of cell cycle regulation, as well as dysregulation of the cytoskeleton remodeling by raw GTPases. And this is about this process that I would like to talk further today. So we went on doing some analysis on our RNA-seq data, and we did some gene set enrichment analysis. And this analysis highlighted several genes that were predicted to be enriched in this focal adhesion category. So among these genes, you can see that fibronectin is highly expressed, as well as its receptor, the integrin beta-1 gene, and members of the VAV family. So what are VAVs? So VAVs are actually guanine exchange factors, or GEF, which are non-activators of raw GTPase, such as RAC1, ROA, CDC42, by catalyzing the exchange of GDP for GTP. And interestingly, these valves are known to be involved in important processes for regeneration of epithelial cells, including cell proliferation, differentiation, and polarization. So we thought it was worth investigating these VAV genes a little bit further. So that's what we did. And first, we studied our primary cultures of CF and non-CF airway epithelial cells by QRT-PCR to determine which type of isoform of VAV was mostly expressed. And as you can see from this plot, we detected messenger RNA for VAV3, which was actually even dramatically increased and enhanced in CF cells. This was also confirmed by Western blot. So you can see here the expression of VAV3 in non-CF cultures, as well as in CF cultures taken from patients with expressing the F508del mutations of CFTR. And VAV3 was really much increased. We also developed an antibody against VAV3 for immunostaining purposes. And again, this is actually an immunostaining from a section, a cryostat section of primary cultures of non-CF and CF airway epithelial cells. And you can see that VAV3 normally is localized at the periphery of basal cells and at the apical surface of the airway epithelium. But now in CF, there is a huge increase in the expression of VAV3, mostly at the apical surface of the epithelium. And I also add this image here. This is a 3D reconstruction from confocal microscope images showing the accumulation of VAV3 in CF cells underneath the cilia, which are stained here by the acetylated alpha-tubulin antibody. So this data indicate that VAV3 is overexpressed in the CF airway epithelium. So what about the other genes that were enriched in the focal adhesion category? So we looked for fibronectin and for beta-1 integrin. And you can see here by immunostaining as well as by Western blot that also these two genes, fibronectin and beta-1 integrin, were much increased in CF cultures. So fibronectin, I mean, it's just impressive, is mostly accumulating in between the cells, and some can also reach the apical surface. For beta-1 integrin, we used an antibody against the active form of beta-1 integrin, which is normally located in the basal side of the epithelium, facing, of course, the extracellular matrix. When in CF, we can witness actually a switch in the polarization of the airway epithelium, with an accumulation of beta-1 integrin at the cell surface. So all of these observations are very interesting, but nevertheless, they can be coincidental. So it was important to demonstrate whether they were actually directly dependent of CFTR dysfunction. So to address this question, we needed to use a simpler model, and then we switched to Calu3 cells. So Calu3 is an airway epithelial cell line. It has been presented, introduced before by Professor Cherry. So we culture these cells also on transwell filters, and we keep them at the air liquid interface for about 2 weeks. And under these conditions, they express a high amount of CFTR, as it can be seen here. So what we did was to silence CFTR by using CRISPR-Cas9 technology. So in CFTR knockdown cells now, you can see that CFTR is gone. This is a quantification of many Western blots. And we also verified that the CFTR functions was reduced in CFTR knockdown cells. So this is electrophysiological measurements. These are short circuit currents measured in Ising chambers. And you can see here the short circuit current, CFTR currents evoked by cyclic AMP. And you can see that this current is strongly diminished, strongly reduced in CFTR knockdown cells. So what happens in these cells when CFTR is knocked down? And interestingly, we found increased VAV3 expression, increased fibronectin expression, and also increased beta-1 integrin expression. So this is very interesting because this data indicates that the phenotypes that we observed in primary cells appears to be CFTR dependent, and also interestingly, that these Calu3 cells do recapitulate, at least in part, what is observed in primary cultures of CF and epithelial cells. Another piece of data that I'd like to share with you is this one. So what we did here was to monitor the appearance, the surface appearance of fibronectin with polarization of Calu3 cells. So again, cells were cultured under submerged conditions in transwell filters, and then brought to an air liquid interface. And we followed fibronectin deposition at the cell surface as a function of time at the air liquid interface. And as you can see, basically, well, you cannot see much because nothing happens in control cells. However, when CFTR is knocked down, we can now detect the appearance of fibronectin from day 3 on. So on the next slide, this is similar data. This is fibronectin expression. These are color cells cultured for 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks, so we can see fibronectin at the cell surface, but also we can detect active beta-1 integrin in these cells. So again, recapitulating what we can observe in primary cell cultures. We also could demonstrate that beta-1 integrin and VAV3 are interacting proteins. So what is shown here is a co-immunoprecipitation experiment where we did immunoprecipitate beta-1 integrin and blot VAV3 in the precipitates. And you can see that VAV3 is enriched in CFTR knockdown cells. We also performed the inverse experiments, IPVAV3, and detect beta-1 integrin in the precipitate, which again was also enriched in CFTR knockdown cells. So these results raise the question whether the changes that we observe in terms of apical deposition of fibronectin and apical expression of beta-1 integrin could be dependent of these overexpression of VAV3. And to address these questions, then we generate double knockdown Calu3 cells, knockdown for CFTR and knockdown for VAV3, again by using the CRISPR-Cas9 technology. And as you can appreciate on this immunostaining, knocking down VAV3 totally prevented the apical deposition of fibronectin to the cell surface and also prevented the activation of beta-1 integrin. So these data are actually interesting, but what could be the consequence of these observations in the context of cystic fibrosis? And it's worth to remind that it is known for many years, actually for some bacteria, like Staphylococcus aureus, it's known already for more than 40 years, that bacteria has the capacity to bind to extracellular matrix proteins. And this is actually the case for Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So it has been actually shown some years ago already that fibronectin and integrin can mediate the binding of Pseudomonas aeruginosa to the dedifferentiated airway epithelium. And this may occur through different mechanisms by the intermediate of some bacterial proteins, like a protein who can bind to a fibronectin, or a pilin protein that can bind to the integrin. So this led us to perform some adhesion assays and to determine whether actually when CFTR was knocked down in our cells, we could actually observe an increased adhesion of Pseudomonas aeruginosa.
You have 5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. Perfectly on time. So this is actually the outcome of such an adhesion assay, where you can see now that we performed this assay using a laboratory strain of Pseudomonas aeruginosa. This is PR1, and indeed you can see that knocking down CFTR was associated with an increased adhesion to the Calu3 cells of Pseudomonas aeruginosa, or PR1. But very interestingly, you can see now that this increased adhesion was totally prevented when we knocked down VAV3 in CFTR knockdown cells. So we also confirmed these results using other Pseudomonas strains. We used actually another laboratory strain commonly used in labs, the PAC strain, and we observed exactly the same phenomenon, and also 2 clinical strains isolated from lungs of patients with cystic fibrosis, and again, knocking down VAV3 in CFTR KD cells totally prevented the adhesion of Pseudomonas aeruginosa to the cell surface. So to sum up, what we have shown here is that dysfunction of CFTR is associated with the increased expression of VAV3, which triggers the formation of an apical complex of VAV3 together with beta-1 integrin, onto which fibronectin can bind and activate the integrin. And this complex of fibronectin beta-1 integrin forms a docking station for Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Another interesting outcome from this study is that the CF airway epithelium exhibit a phenotype of a partially differentiated epithelium. So to conclude, these data indicate that CFTR-dependent VAV3 overexpression may predispose the CF airway epithelium to early infection by Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Our observation also indicates that there is an impact of the CF phenotype on the apico-basolateral polarization of the airway epithelium during its regeneration. And we believe that in vitro disease models of the airway epithelium, such as provided by Epitelix, allow to discover mechanisms for recurrent infection of the CF lung, and they can also represent an interesting model to study pathogen interaction with proteins of the extracellular matrix. And we really believe that these models can be useful for to understand the role that CFTR plays in other important functions, including development, differentiation, regeneration, and cancer. So with that, I would like to thank past and present members of my lab, our close collaborators for many years now, the group of Christian van Delden, Thilo Koller, Alexandre Bücher from the Department of Microbiology and Molecular Medicine here in Geneva, our friends from Epitelix who are really helping us over the years. Thank you guys, as well as our sponsors. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, a lot for this really great talk. We have several questions here. The first question is directed to the first part of your talk, where you mentioned the suprabasal cells and secretory cells. Are there some available markers to distinguish these cells?
Yes, there are markers that have been identified definitely. So you can find these markers in actually in different reviews that we recently published. So I cannot remember just by heart right now which markers they are, but definitely you can identify them. Yes.
A second question is related to, let's say, the CRISPR-Cas9 CFTR silencing on Calyus 3 that you elegantly achieved, and the fact that you still observe a bit of chlorine channel activity in muting chamber. Could you comment on that?
Yes, actually, the reason is very simple, is that we did not perform clonal selection of the cells that have been transduced. So we use lentiviral vectors to transduce the CRISPR-Cas9 and to target CFTR. And actually, we did not do any cloning. So there is some remaining expression of the CFTR proteins. That is very similar to what you can find actually in F-avoidal, in the F-avoidal situation, where there is still some residual chloride currents that can be measured in some cases, mostly in primary cells. So we thought that actually it was very interesting to use a knockdown model rather than a knockout model, because it could cover different classes of mutations from class 1 to basically class 4, where there is no proteins, no currents, reduced current, or reduced gating of the channel. So actually, what I can complete this, because we have also studied fibronectin and beta-1 integrin and VAV3 expression in other cell types, actually in our epithelial cell types, expressing purely the F-avoidal mutation or the G551D mutation. And in both cases, we could also find an increased expression of fibronectin and VAV3 and beta-1 integrin.
Thanks a lot. Another question from the audience. Do you see let's say, all the research that you presented as being developed into treatment?
Well, that's a very nice question. So there are maybe different ways to tackle the problem. So one way is to tackle actually fibronectin, whether it is a safe way to try to prevent the binding of the bacteria to this increased expression of fibronectin. This maybe could be achieved by developing specific peptides or antibodies against the part of the proteins that interact with the bacteria. That could be one way. We are another way is to tackle VAV3, but VAV3 is a raw GTPase, so we have to be extremely careful. And I don't think that we need to reduce VAV3 directly, but to understand what is the link between dysfunctional CFTR and increased in VAV3 expression. So we are currently studying this question. And what I can tell you so far is that we are having evidence that VAV3 increased in VAV3 expression is actually due to an increased stability of the messenger RNA for VAV3. And so if we can understand a little bit more of the mechanisms that stabilize the messenger RNA, we may actually identify some interesting targets for therapy.
And final question. So in your wounding assay, do you completely strip all cells or some basal cells are left behind?
No, but basically it's what I tried to show in the first image. So we still have an intact epithelium at the periphery of the wound. And this epithelium contains basal cells. And so I didn't show you the data here because of sake of time, although actually I can see that I could have added this data. So you can really see by following proliferation. So if you use Ki67 as a marker of proliferation, you can see the basal cells getting, starting to be stained, and you can see actually their proliferation and migration to cover the wounded area. So yes, definitely this is really due to, I mean, it's very amazing because you do nothing, you don't wound, you wait, and it does repair spontaneously. So it's a very nice model for that.
Mark, thank you so much for this really great and in-depth, let's say, travel through CF and your research. Thanks a lot. For a sake of time, I think we should move to, let's say, the next speakers with an S, because these are young scientists and which would be introduced, who would be introduced by Song Wang.